Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
Now, when Jeremy Corbyn became leader of the opposition back in September, he said he wanted to make PMQs less aggressive, less confrontational, with the focus on policy, not personal attacks. So has he succeeded? In a moment, we'll speak to an academic who says he has the answer. But first, let's get a reminder of how the Labour leader has been shaking things up at PMQs.
Jeremy Corbyn!
Many told me that they thought Prime Minister's Question Time was too theatrical, that Parliament was out of touch and too theatrical, and they wanted things done differently, but above all, they wanted their voice heard in Parliament.
Can I welcome him to the front bench and to these exchanges? I know we will have many strong disagreements, I'm sure, between us at these exchanges, but where we can work together in the national interest, we should do so, and I wish him well in his job.
I had more than 1,000 questions on tax credits. Paul, for example, says this very heartfelt question: why is the government taking tax credits away from families? The Year 6 pupils were very interesting. Hawan, Tasnia, Eamon and Mary-Ann asked me to say this to the Prime Minister: why are you doing this? Martin contacted me this week, who says, OK, it's very funny for many members opposite, it's not funny for Martin.
So I thought this was the new question time. I'm not sure the message has fully got home.
Now, we're joined from Nottingham by Dr Peter Bull. He has co-authored some research which shows that Mr Corbyn's tactic of using questions from the public has had some effect on the style of debate. Welcome to the Daily Politics. So what's the impact been?
Well, good afternoon to you. We've done a study of Corbyn's use of these questions, which are sourced from members of the public.
Yes.
And we actually used two measures, in fact, one of which we called reply rate. That's simply the extent to which the Prime Minister answers the questions that are put to him. In that respect, we didn't find any effect. Cameron only gives direct replies to about 20% of the questions, and that doesn't matter whether they're sourced from members of the public or not sourced from members of the public. But where we did find an effect is where we looked at personal attacks. And overall, David Cameron makes almost twice as many personal attacks on Corbyn as Corbyn does on him. But when you compare questions from members of the public with those other questions, you find his rate of personal attacks drops quite significantly and is quite similar to that of Corbyn. So it does seem sourcing these questions from members of the public seems to have a significant effect on the personal attacks that Cameron is making in PMQs.
Right, not answering the question, of course, is a common strategy amongst politicians that we certainly experience here on a daily basis. But it's interesting in terms of using the personalised questions. Has it contributed to making PMQs more grown up and less confrontational?
Well, I think personal attacks are confrontational. And the issue is there whether you're actually making the sort of Punch and Judy show which David and Cameron actually criticised when he first became leader of the Conservative Party, or whether you're actually discussing the actual issues concerned. And there seems to be some effect on these questions sourced from members of the public, that there is a greater attention to the actual issue rather than to this sort of Punch and Judy politics.
Right. I mean, you actually had to sit down and watch 20 sessions of PMQs in a row. Was that a depressing experience or an enlightening one?
I actually find it really rather interesting, unlike a lot of people. We've done quite a lot of PMQs. We also did 20 PMQs with Ed Miliband and David Cameron for comparison purposes. And I find the fine details of communication very interesting.
Right. I mean, Lisa Nandy.
It's like my worst nightmare.
What, watching them in a row?
40 episodes of PMQs.
And the repeats are even better, as we heard today, obviously. I mean, Isn't that the point of PMQs? It's supposed to be adversarial. Whether you're using personalised questions from the public doesn't seem to have had that much of a dramatic change because the personal attacks are still there.
I think it has changed. I've definitely noticed a change in the feel in the chamber. I mean, what hasn't changed, as you just heard, is that Cameron still doesn't answer the question. But I think when Jeremy uses questions from members of the public, it makes it harder for him to be so personal and so brutal. And it's quite noticeable, actually, that every time Jeremy references a member of the public, Tory MPs groan very loudly. So they obviously don't really like it, and they don't want to be held to account in that way. And that's, you know, credit to him. All leaders of the opposition say they're going to change PMQs. Cameron said it when he was leader of the opposition, but Jeremy has actually done it.
Yes, I mean, he has put his money where his mouth is, hasn't he, Jeremy Corbyn? I don't know if you're one of those who groans when he asks questions.
Often go,
so. Well, that's no excuse. You could be groaning from your living room. But the research doesn't look very good, does it, for the Conservative Party or for David Cameron, with his high use of personal attacks?
Well, I think what the study seems to show is that politicians have more respect for the public than they have for one another. That's hardly a great surprise, I think, to any of us. The thing about Prime Minister's questions, and it's interesting how Jeremy Corbyn's moved away from that initial approach in recent weeks, with most people saying he's done better, is that it's one thing to read out a question and be a post box for the electorate, but the art of Prime Minister's questions is to use the answer you get to take forward your case and be able to probe a bit further. And certainly in the early days, I thought he was very ineffective because we would simply go on to another question from the public without any analysis of what the answer had been, and that made it very easy for the Prime Minister.
Dr. Peter Bull, thank you very much.
Thank you.
20 PMQs in a row is nothing. I've just worked out I've covered 450 since 2003.
You haven't watched them consecutively.
How do you know? It can be cold at night.